Why don't you come up here a little bit closer, everybody? So I'll introduce, if you don't know who these people are. Over on the far left is Chuck. Chuck's been leading a small group for several years now. In the middle is Al. Al, this is his first season leading, but his boys have grown up here at Crossroads. And this is Sarah. And Sarah's been involved at Elevate for several years, gone on mission trips with us and all that. So welcome, guys. I've got a couple of questions for you all. The first question here, we're going to start with Al, all right? You're going to lead off for us. Al, we just talked about that story. What stands out to you the most from that Bible story?
Well, I want to say that I also struggle with pride. It's something that, it's a daily thing for me. As I look at the story, I see that pride, because I relate to the Pharisee, pride has such a blinding effect on my spiritual life. And that so much that I don't give God the opportunity to expose the true condition of my heart. So that's what I see.
Okay, great. Chuck, I've got a question for you. We're talking about humility. How do you define humility?
Like you said, when I think of humility, the first thing I think of is being humble. Yet, being humble, we know that you can be prideful. And when you think more what humility is, I like to think of it more of a inward and an outward focus. Inward is what we've been learning through Andrew the last couple of weeks about transformation and letting God transform you. So the inner focus could be, you thinking less of yourself, of what others think of you. And then you can apply that to others and thinking about others more than you think of yourself.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. Sarah, question for you here. What are some of the biggest enemies of humility?
I would say there's a couple that I can think of that I think are really easy to struggle with today in just the culture that we live in. And the first one that came to mind goes off of what Chuck was just talking about, having that inward versus outward focus. Because I think in today's culture, an enemy toward having that humble attitude is being really inward focused and focused on yourself. Our culture kind of trains us to be that way because we have social media, which is like all about ourselves, and so it's something that's really easy to fall into, I think. But the problem with that is humility requires self-sacrifice and just thinking of other people first. So I think that is something, when you have that inward focus, that is going to be going against humility. And then the second thing, I think, is wanting to give ourselves credit when God really deserves it. When things are going really well in my life or in our lives, it's easy to feel like it's myself, it's my gifts or my abilities that's done it. When honestly the truth is that it's the Lord and He deserves the credit and not myself. So
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. Al, how do you practically, like on a daily basis in your life, how do you help yourself to be humble? What do you do practically?
Okay, for me, I think it would be thankful. I think when I recognize in my life that everything that I'm able to do, my talents, ability, and have come from God. God had made that possible, and even my future, He's planned it already. So it's all God. The hand of God is my life and everything, every direction I go. So being thankful reminds me of that every day, and I don't take credit when I'm supposed to.
Absolutely. So focusing on God.
Yes.
Absolutely. Chuck, what have you found helpful to grow in humility?
I think of two things. First is the daily work through the Bible. The second thing is watching how other Christians display humility. A good example, devotions. When Andrew was asking me about speaking of humility, I was doing a daily devotion on Ephesians 4 in verse 2. It says, and I'll try to paraphrase, it says, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love." And that's what I think about the inward focus and the outward focus. If you're completely humble and gentle, and then patient, then you can use that in helping others in need, in love. So, and the second part is, watching other Christians. And I was younger, it's always watching the older, wiser, more mature Christians. But even in my walk, I had a couple of students just a couple of weeks ago display that in our small group. One student, in the last Elevate, gave his testimony. So he was sharing himself, thinking less of himself than others think about it. And I had another student who came to me and says, let's do a service project. And we did a spaghetti dinner as a group, helping somebody at a spaghetti dinner raising money for cancer. So you can learn from each other.
Great. So I hear you saying reading the Word, spending time with God, and then looking to other people who are following Jesus. That's great. That's great. Sarah, question for you. How is false humility or fake humility a big temptation?
I think that's something that's really easy to fall into because essentially it's, putting on this outward thing like you are a humble person, but on the inside you're really full of pride. And I think the Pharisee in the story tonight is a good example of that, because from an outward perspective it looked like he was a humble person probably. He went to church and he prayed and did all the right things, so to speak. But on the inside, his attitude about himself and toward others was just completely full of pride. And the hard part is that nobody else knows that except for yourself and the Lord. And so there's no one else to tell you like, hey, you're being prideful. So I think that that's something that is hard, and we have to just keep looking to God and asking Him to really help us and to check our hearts and to let us know and show us when we are being prideful like that. So.
Yeah, it's definitely something that could stand on the surface for a long time. Okay. Well, we got one more question that I want each of you to kind of answer in your own way. So we'll start with you, Chuck, and kind of go down the line. What advice do you have to give students here about focusing on Jesus and growing in humility?
Don't be afraid to make a mistake, because you will. I've made many mistakes, but we're talking about spiritual growth, growing in your faith. And if you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, He will transform you. It's not a light switch. And it's growing all the time. So be patient. For those that see others struggling, you help them. So, as yourself, you're trying to grow spiritually, but also, like I said, the outward, you're helping each other grow too. So be patient with it.
That's good. Yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Al, what advice do you have?
I would say get to know Jesus. I think spending time with Him through prayer and reading the Bible, get to know Him. Tell Him how you feel, what hurts when nobody understands you. Tell Him that. Tell Him all the problems that you're going through. Develop that close relationship with Him, and let Him speak to you and heal you those areas in your life. Because as He start healing you, I think it's gonna develop into a humble life. Because those issues that are in your heart is the ones that are sometimes feeding pride.
That's good. I'd love to have a t-shirt that just says, "Get to know Jesus, Al Starkman." Sarah, what advice do you have for us?
Yeah, I would just kind of echo what they've already said. Just keep getting to know, pursuing the Lord, because the closer you get to Him, the more He's going to reveal to you who you are. I think when we see the greatness of God, we can't help but be more humble, because we realize that all the ways that we thought we were good, we're not really. And I guess I would also just say look for opportunities to put other people first. It's a good way to practice it just day to day. Our natural inclination is to put ourselves first, so if we can try to change our mindset, and it could be something as simple as letting someone go in front of you at lunch, in the line or whatever, just looking for those opportunities.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you all for sharing. Let's give them a round of applause.